a question. Did you expect any of this to happen? Like power, Aki, the whole Flippian nature of Asa and war, Denji even throwing up snow, which means that Pochita was actively hunting down and erasing things that were traumatizing or quote-unquote triggering for Denji to experience. Did you expect any of that? Because I'm kind of in the middle. Some things I thought about and other things are a complete surprise, and I'm happy for that. For me, the shock comes in the form of how brutal and straightforward this chapter is. It really just gets to the point. It doesn't really linger or beat around the bush, which I like that. We have said lingered around a lot of Denji's emotions for quite some time, and while it's always intent and purposeful with how it wants to do it, there's always a level of ambiguity, a level of murkiness, a level of uneasiness that never truly gets answered. And that's always been a problem. That's always been an issue. Denji could never really find the answers for himself. So he tends to run away. He tends to shield himself because that's all he's ever known, and who can blame him? A way to save himself. But funny enough, in this environment, in this place, with Asa and war doing this back and forth thing, right now, the answers come forward and a possibility is born. Alright, so this is pretty straightforward. Denji and War are kind of doing this back and forth thing. War is trying to kiss Denji to try and get him to snap out of it and to move on. Very silly way to go about it, but that's kind of War trying to manipulate the situation. The funniest thing about it is that War doesn't really understand how this is being leveraged or utilized, does not understand Denji's perspective, and is kind of just doing it because she thinks it's what Denji wants. Very, very much wrong. Because of this, it kind of shows how silly War is, and that she doesn't really have a brain process after a certain point of conflict. And what I mean by this is Denji reacts to this exactly the way you would want him to. He is just as confused. For someone that is wrongfully boiled down to being some sort of sex pest or addict, this is the best example of how traumatizing the whole sexual orientation of his character is because it's always been forcefully imposed, assaulted, or abused onto him. Manipulation is just the beginning of those cracks. It goes further and in a really horrible direction for Denji. So when he expresses that he doesn't want this, telling her to stop and to get off him, and that it switches him from two different things, it starts to drive him crazy, and recognizes that his life alternates between being quote unquote sexy and terrible, it makes him conflicted. Because when he gets caught up in the quote unquote sexy part of it, he can't reflect on certain things. He can't think properly about the stuff that he's gone through. But this is a very powerful moment, a very big moment. This is one of the first times that he's actively pushed back against it, and forcefully too. And he's not being coy about it. He's angry. He's tired of being abused and assaulted and being forced upon, but not think about certain things that he wants to think about. You know what I mean? It's almost like losing his autonomy. Never truly thinking for himself and always have something competing on top of it. To reiterate, War not really understanding the situation, she tries to give a bit of a pep talk. Because Denji expressed that he feels hopeless. Do you want to know how War reacts? She just says get over it. And if she can get over it, so can Denji. And I think you can tell just by the way she's drawn, she's so happy by her own words that she actually feels like she's done something productive. Yet she is not helped in any way, shape or form. These are not answers, these are not results, these are not improving anything. Arguably it makes the situation work. It's like this, right? Here's me going through the worst, painful, most traumatizing experience of my life. Well, I got over it, that means you can get over it too. That's the answer you give, and it's just pathetic. War has no understanding of compassion to this degree at all. She's trying to control the situation, has none of it whatsoever. So who better to talk about a situation than Asa? And she forcefully takes control, by the way, snapping War out of it and Asa regaining control. I think this is exactly what people have always wanted. The Asa that we've come to know, the reflection, the things that she has gone through, and using it as a reference to potentially the stuff that Denji has gone through. And while they're very different, no one's scaling their trauma or their pain, more so just their experience. Denji wants to know how he can accept these things, how he can, think about it and talk about it and remember it without spiraling out of control. And something very important that Asa says that I think will have a very big impact on Denji is that she could never get over it. It's just not possible. In contrast, Denji is someone that runs. He is someone that hides it. He is someone that avoids it entirely. That's all he's ever known. And it's not something that you can blame him for. It's arguably what's kept him alive this entire time. It is a trauma response. And this is something that I've been talking about for years at this point. He's never had someone to confront it with him. The trauma, the issues, all the problems that he's gone through, doing it alone is not possible for him. And that if he ever had someone, he would be able to do it. And Asa is very, very slowly opening up that door. Because not only did she drop that previous bombshell, but she dropped something even bigger. Chainsaw Man taught her that she still has something to live for, something to look forward to so much that she's willing to eat a crap burger. Just to clarify that and throw it in the air, she's willing to take all of the garbage and all of the nonsense because Chainsaw Man taught her that she has something to live for. Something to look forward to, something that keeps her going. For all the nonsense and the chaoticness that these two have been through, this is like a dagger to the heart. This is so straight to the point, and you can tell because the reaction that Denji has is almost instant. He throws up a devil. That devil is Snow. And the last panels, which not only affects Aging's world environment, but also ushers in a flashback. The Hokkaido flashback from Chainsaw Man Part 1 with Power and Aki. They took a boat trip to Aki's family grave, something that's very important to Denji. And to end it there is actually criminal. So I got a little bit carried away with the Asa and Denji explanation in the recap, but I need to point out just how important this is. Like, this is a first time thing for kind of either of them. For once, they are mutually kind of meeting in the middle. Denji is sitting here, listening, actively engaging in the conversation. He wants to hear how to help himself. How do you get over it? How do you, accept certain things? How do you do this? How do you do that? You can tell that he's desperately trying to figure out some sort of answer that works for him, but he's willing to listen. And it's not like he's ignorant or vain to the idea. It's just the conversations that he's had with people never lead him down a really good path. They always abruptly end, or the direction that they provide is not for him. So seeing it from Asa of all people, I think is powerful. I think it works incredibly well, something that we knew was coming, but to this extent, to this degree, makes me think that she's flipped her whole perspective entirely. This is someone that has wanted to help Chainsaw Man for a long time, and now that she actually has, I feel like we changed their dynamic a lot. It also shows just how inhuman War actually is. For someone that has been humanized more and more throughout the story, she's still not there. War is incredibly pathetic in this chapter, and it is to be expected. It also makes me believe that she too is afraid to even reflect on potentially her own trauma and the things that she's gone through as the component of War. And we know there's more there. She's just a little bit iffy to tiptoe around it. And honestly, I think it's because it's Denji. She's already had kind of a one-to-one solo deep and meaningful session with Asa in that bathtub, which really humanizes the devil that she is. But then she quickly snaps back and almost halfly erases all of that work. Like she's scared to be human or even recognize that she has quote-unquote human traits for a devil. Like she can reflect upon her children, and then in the next chapter she's like, I don't care, like I'm just gonna use them anyway. So either she's really biting her tongue and kind of forcing herself to do it, or deep down she's just swallowing everything that she has. I would say a small example of that is her missing the meat of the conversation. She starts it trying to be relatable, saying that she's lost people, and then she arrives at the end point. There's always the possibility that maybe she just does not have process of elimination. Maybe she just doesn't have a thought pattern for that meat. Maybe she genuinely just has the beginning and the end, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because the representation of War is arguably the most clustered thing. The start and end of War is arguably the most sensitive, but then in the middle is just all out chaos and war. Absolutely incomprehensible. It's an important conversation that I'm very happy they finally had, and one that I think is spurred also by the environment that they're in. So I originally talked about Aging's world being like inner reflection, that this is a place where you spend time to figure yourself out, and that perhaps if you can do that, you would be able to leave. So far, all the signs are kind of pointing in that direction, because we're getting arguably some of the most introspective stuff that we've ever had. And with the chapter ending on a flashback and Denji throwing up snow, which is something that's very painful to him, is going through this introspective journey. But what does this actually mean? The best way that I can put this is that Pochita has been doing this since day one. The most traumatizing experience that Denji has ever had was locked behind a door, a creation by himself. But the person that sat in front of that door and that always kind of steered him away from it was Pochita. Don't open that door, don't go near it, it's not worth it, you shouldn't have to. And what was behind that door was traumatizing experiences. Now, I don't expect Pochita to understand, I don't expect devils to understand, but when you lock away trauma like that, it does nothing for you. Arguably, it makes it worse. And that's to be expected that Pochita wouldn't understand, right? He wants what's best for Denji, and you can't really understand what's best for someone when they're hiding away and bottling up so much pain and agony. You're just seeing the happiness because they're no longer sad. And of course, the big triggering moment, seeing the head of Naoyata, he loses control, and Pochita is going on this rampage to try and fix all the pieces. In a really sensitive and sad way, this is Pochita kind of trying his best to save Denji, to put him back together. Can you blame him? There's realistically no saying if Denji would ever come out of a Pochita form from what he'd just seen. Maybe this is the only way Pochita knows how to do it, is by kind of changing his memories a little bit, by bottling things away, by trying to, allow him some sort of peace of mind for a moment. But then Aging's world comes into play and allows Denji to kind of sit here without the real world consequences or all of the influence of the real world, and just sit here within his own inner thoughts. And because of this one simple conversation, one that he's always needed to have, everything releases. It's almost cathartic. Everything that he's bottled up, as soon as he's talked to someone, it just releases itself. And I can't stress enough how that's so important, because Denji is the one throwing the devil up, not Pochita. And we've never seen it this way before. That means it's very, very different. This also makes me think that this environment, this world, and its purpose is happening also in real time. So by the time they go back to the normal world, Snow and potentially a bunch of other devils that Denji throws up will be back to existing. But before we even get there, we have to face the biggest problem, which is power anarchy. Something that Denji has tiptoed around for a while, something that he's scared to remember. But maybe it's time, but maybe he's partially ready to experience them again. Hopefully, it can save him, because there's not many more options after this.